listening to Next in the Queue, and I am joined with Lip Critic today. Do y'all want to introduce yourselves?
Yep, I'm Brett. I do vocals and sampler in Lip Critic.
Yeah, my name is Connor. I do production and sampling, stuff like that.
I'm Danny. I play drums in Lip Critic.
Awesome. So most of you met while studying at SUNY Purchase. How do you think your sound has evolved from the early days of Lip Critic?
Well, I feel like when we started, we were trying to just kind of like outdo a lot of like digital hardcore and like hardcore groups generally by just being like more aggressive and kind of like bombastic than them. That was like our whole sort of like mission statement. I think at the start of it was just like try and make the most like insane accelerated music we could. And now we're more sort of just shifting towards like this like feeling of stuff that we were doing kind of on the last record and now this new one, which is just much more like I feel like hard to pin down than just like trying to make really aggressive kind of like slammy electronic music with drums. I think it's gone in this kind of like almost sort of like hyper poppy infused kind of like much more genreless direction.
Yeah, I feel like we're kind of trying. I feel like we're trying to go in both extremes though at the same time, where it's like I feel like a lot of the stuff we're working on now is like way more melodic, but then and like softer almost and slower sometimes. But then at other points, it's just like the fastest song we've ever done, or like there will be a random like death metal breakdown or something in it. And it's like, yeah, we're trying to kind of go on both ends of extremity, like extremely like weird and kind of like poppy and melodic. And then on the other lens, like extremely heavy and fast and in your face.
The early stuff was more, I feel like, maximalist for like the sake of maximalism. And now I think we still like embody a lot of those like elements that we were originally taking from, but with a lot more intention now as opposed to then.
Yeah, I definitely think with Hex Dealer, like you said, very genreless. You could definitely see like some electronic influences and then definitely hardcore influences. And like you were saying pop, because I feel like lyric wise, it's like very much feels poppy, but like the way you deliver the lyrics is very much not that.
Yeah, no, I mean, we're definitely like we're very, like we listen to a lot of different stuff. We're not like, none of us are really like married to any kind of specific genre of stuff we like, or like any kind of like a scene or anything. We really just like listen to a massive breadth of music. So it always kind of feels like natural when we start to write and we start to record that it kind of just goes in this direction where we're pulling from, a lot of places that might not instantly feel like they coexist well, but it's like it's kind of the whole game is trying to see how you fit together stuff that shouldn't necessarily fit together.
Yeah, I really like that because I feel like um people that I've talked to in the past um try to stick to one genre. Like they're like those two things don't really kind of mix together. And I think honestly, I think it's kind of like a staple of New York. I feel like a lot of bands that I listen to that are New York based are doing things that aren't traditional.
Yeah, no, definitely. There's a lot of, I think also right now, there's a lot of experimentation and a lot of like sort of messing around with like the form of a band, like a band that's like our friends like Pawns, which is like a guitar and like sort of 1.5 drummer band. It's like 2 drummers, but one isn't playing like a full kit. And they have like electronic tracks that play in the thing, and they have a ton of like vocal processing and like cool guitar stuff. And like Venus Twins also, who we played with on the last tour, it's like they have, these like electronic sort of like cues that are happening off of like a laptop, but then they're also, playing just like bass and drums and vocals. But the whole thing is like, it feels like this kind of like response to like the 2 guitars, bass drum, vocal thing getting just like a little harder to rework as time goes on. Like, how do you make it interesting people just are reaching for like new toys and like new ideas that usually like just aren't really given to bands.
Yeah, I really do like the Venus Twins setup. Like, I feel like anytime I've seen them live, it's like really crazy.
Yeah, they're so good.
So like we're talking about how you guys listen to different types of music. What do you think you listened to growing up, and how do you think that shapes who you are currently?
Yeah, I mean, I listened to like a ton of stuff. I mean, my parents were really big Talking Heads fans. My mom loved like a lot of Brazilian music, a lot of stuff that was on None Such at the time. There was like a ton of sort of like a contemporary, like classical, like there was like the whole Philip Glass, Steve Reich school of stuff was getting released on there at the time. And yeah, a bunch of like Caetano Veloso and like Milton Nascimento and stuff was coming out. So it was like that I heard a ton of. My mom was like a huge Motown head. And then like I got really into electronic music, like just on my own volition. Like I just got really into like Benny Benassi and Skrillex when I was like probably in fifth grade or so. It was when I started to actually like go on the internet and be like looking up records, and that was what I gravitated towards like automatically. It was all this stuff that felt kind of like, you know, extremely like bassy, fast, you know, like distorted electronic stuff. And so yeah, I just feel like my parents listened to like a huge chunk of stuff. They took me to a ton of shows, and yeah, I think that's one of the reasons that I have like no attention span for like anything for too long, is because it's just like I was always being fed new stuff to look at and listen to.
Yeah. Do you want to go, Dan?
Yeah. I mean, as a kid, I feel like when I was first like really getting into music, I mean, my dad put me onto a lot of like obviously like kind of the classic rock stuff that anyone, like most people who are like starting out like playing music kind of discover. But I think the stuff that really like moved me, and the stuff that is my dad's favorite that really impacted me, was like a lot of like 80s and 90s alternative, like REM, Husker Du, the Police, like bands like that. The Cure is a big one as well. And that was kind of when I was a kid, almost the music that like sort of like radicalized me as a music listener when I was younger, where I was like, okay, I like this sort of like left of center thing. And then, when I'm younger, I'm also like discovering a lot of like pop punk. I was really into like Green Day and Blink-182 bands that I still love. And through that was really when I started like, and this was, around like middle school time. It's like I was getting into those kinds of bands. And soon that really just became like, oh, now here's Rancid, here's Bad Brains, here's Minor Threat, AFI, like all these bands that kind of like, turned into me. Rage Against the Machine was another huge one that kind of like both bred my love of like hardcore and my love of metal. And yeah, like as I got older, I just continued to kind of go down this path of like discovering these hardcore and metal bands. But that all started kind of from like the alternative and the punk music and like the pop punk music and stuff that I grew up listening to.
Yeah. I was like exposed to a lot of like classic rock and like stuff like this, like just from the parents, like CD collections and what they would like listen to on the radio, that was a big thing. And like, I remember like getting like we moved into a new house, and the old owners had like left behind a CD player, and I was like, oh hell yeah, I get to like put this in my room now, and like listen to all these CDs that my parents had. That was like a lot of like indie stuff, like I don't know, like 90s indie, like Radiohead and Chili Peppers and stuff like that. But really there's like, I guess, a turning point where just like I had more like unadulterated access to the internet and no money, and was just like torrenting everything and just like basically wringing DatPiff out for like what it was worth, like literally downloading like everything on DatPiff, and just like being exposed to like a lot of just like terrible rap music for a very long time. And like that was definitely, I feel like, very influential, and just like the type of music I liked to start to like produce was like hip hop and stuff like that. But like, I don't know, just like not really like embodying the like the just more embodying the like production style, just like being obsessed with like Young Chop and stuff like that, and then like sort of like discovering more other electronic music, like I don't know, yeah, like Skrillex or like Andy Stott, like discovering that in high school, and now like completely changing, like, or like Flying Lotus, and like completely changing, like having this entry point to like more like harder electronic music and like rap music, and then like splitting off into like more experimental electronic stuff was like pretty important, I guess.
And I think kind of for all of us, I feel like hip hop was kind of also a genre that we kind of discovered on our own almost. Like aside from our parents, I feel like all three of us, that's kind of the case.
Yeah. My mom
Like,
definitely showed me Outkast, and like that changed my life.
yeah, yeah. I think my first like kind of memory of hearing like rap music was like my dad showing me Demon Days by the Gorillas, like when that came out. And that was like, I was really young at that time. So it's like that didn't really even process to me as like rap music because it was played on alternative radio. It was that kind of thing. But it's like, through that, I discovered MF Doom, discovered like, a lot of like UK rap music.
Right, yeah, I remember this like the first time, like in retrospect, I'd ever heard grime.
Grime
was like on the first Gorillaz record.
Definitely,
and it's just like really. I feel like we were talking about this recently. How actually important, how much Gorillaz I listened to, like as a kid growing up, and like how little credit I sort of give it now. Like, but like how much I listened to it.
Purely like, if we're talking about like kind of the lip critic, like no genre rule, but it like falls under like this category of like, like we're a punk band. Like we're not a punk band, but it's like it's genreless music. It's like Gorillaz were one of the OGs to do that. It was literally just like Damon Albarn just like creating this project that was like allowed him to just collaborate with literally anybody he wants, from like Elton John to
Bobby Womack.
Danny Brown. Yeah, exactly. Bobby Womack, all these random artists, whether they're from like the underground or super, super mainstream, just to make like this kind of like alien music. I feel like that was kind of one of the first of its kind, really. In that sense, I feel like very impactful for all of us.
Yeah, I think it's like cool because this month I've been very like nostalgic and like going back to like private playlists that I have and seeing like artists that have been very influential to me that I like don't necessarily like listen to anymore or give as much credit. And it's kind of cool to see how like that has influenced music that I listen to now, and how you're saying it helps influence like music that you're creating.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I always think of like a band like, I don't know, I feel like one of the first records that I remember like kind of listening to with the idea in my mind that this was like new music and this was something different was like The Black Parade by My Chemical Romance. And it's like you look at most dudes like my age or like our age that like make hardcore music or make emo music or post-hardcore or whatever, or metal even, like it's like, yeah, that was the band, that like got you into this thing. I've met so many people, and it's like, them coming back and like a couple of years ago, it just like showed that it's like they were bringing out Soul Glow and Turnstile and like, all these like hardcore bands to open for them, like really, or like even our homies Gauche opened for them and stuff. And it's like cool to see that they still, like a band like that from our youth, like still has some lasting influence.
Yeah. And I think also growing up in like the internet age where like not the beginning of it, but just kind of like the beginning where it's like you can look up anything really and like discover anything. I feel like a lot of the stuff that I was discovering like late middle school and early high school was due to the internet and like just like continuously wanting to search for something new too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I always credit like I think the internet kind of like destroyed, not necessarily in a bad way, but like destroyed this idea of like you're growing up, like the city that you grow up in or the state you grow up in really like influencing your musical knowledge. Like if you grew up in a city where there was like a really big like country music scene or something, and in like the 40s or something, I'm sure that there would be like, oh yeah, you'd be like really into the thing that was like in your area. But now it's like you can grow up in like literally the you could grow up in Atlanta and be like entirely obsessed with like music that is like being made like in China, just because it's just as easily accessible on the internet as the music that's being made in Atlanta. So it's like, yeah, I find myself all the time, like looking at my like recently added on Apple Music or what I'm listening to, and it's like I'm just thinking, I'm like, all this stuff, I'm listening to records that are like from Egypt and from China and from like awesome band that is from Russia, like this like it's kind of like a collective of all these producers I've been really into, that it's like, and I'm just like, dude, like this is so wild, because it's like as much as we are in like a New York sort of like music scene, and we know a bunch of people who are in bands in the city, I'm just constantly being influenced by people that I've like never met that are from like Indonesia and stuff,
Mhm.
So like I was referencing Gabber Modus Operandi so much, and it's like, yeah, I mean, there's just no way I would have ever been able to discover that stuff without the internet, like ever. And it's just so massive for me, like it's crazy to think.
Yeah. And it's crazy to see how that kind of influences like a region too, because I think in a past interview that I did recently, we were talking about like I'm Nigerian, and like I feel like a lot of Afro beats are like very UK centered now. It's like very much part of the UK scene. And I think that's just like kind of interesting to see how it's gravitated to that, especially like listening to those kind of that kind of music in like my dad's car like 10 years ago. Or honestly, recently I've been listening to this band Dutch Interior, and they're an LA based band, but they don't really sound like the traditional LA band, which I think is really fun and interesting.
Yeah, there's
sure.
like everybody sounds like they're from everywhere. It's like it's so
Yeah.
hard to track anything down.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of awesome. I definitely love it. I'm in favor of like the sort of like infinitely, cross-pollinating kind of stuff, and like the delocalization of like all, aesthetics and everything, to just be like,
Mhm.
wow, this sounds like the sickest like UK like drum and bass thing ever.
Yeah.
It's made by a guy in Egypt. Like, and you're
Yeah,
like,
no.
that's sick. Like,
I mean,
that's
there's
awesome.
people that like come to
Yeah.
our shows and think that we're from the UK. Even though it's like
Dude,
I
it's so
think we sound
funny.
like a
I'm
New
like,
York band, but like people will come to our shows and be like, I thought y'all were British. Like,
yeah, a woman came up to me at the last show we played and was like, please come back to New York soon. And I was like, we all live here. And she's like, I'm from London. And I was
Yeah.
like, dude, listen to my voice.
yes,
Like,
I saw like two tweets about that too. Like two people tweeted,
yeah,
they were like,
come back to New York.
they're like, yo, I
please.
thought it's
Yeah.
crazy.
But I will say, like, I can understand that because I feel like very much what's going on in New York, like now, is like very similar to like London. I feel like London right now or the UK is having a lot of like post-punk.
Mhm.
Yeah, a lot for
Yeah.
sure.
That's really funny though. So what inspired y'all to start making music?
I was really into like visual art as a kid. Both my parents are art teachers, and they were constantly just like giving me like, crayons and stuff. And I was always into like making stuff. And then I just like got on my mom's laptop when she got like her first ever laptop that had GarageBand on it. And it just like broke my brain like instantly. I was just like obsessed with it. So I want to say from like fifth grade on, it was basically just like a focus for me, was making stuff on a laptop. I also like took piano lessons for like 10 years, and really enjoyed like writing for piano at a point. But yeah, I can't really think of like what was the first thing, because it was really just like I was listening to Skrillex a ton and I was like, I want to make dubstep Skrillex music. And then I was just like on my mom's laptop for like 7 hours a day, and she was like, you have to stop. Like,
Mhm.
my email,
Yeah, like I come from like a family of musicians. Like my dad was a musician, his dad was a musician, my uncles are all like in music. And so I don't know, like there's just like guitars and basses and stuff around the house growing up, and I just wanted to, I started playing guitar when I was like very young. I don't really like keep up with it at all. Like I don't really even consider, like I can play guitar, but I don't consider myself a guitar player at all. But like, started playing in bands when I was like probably in third grade maybe, and just like didn't really stop playing in bands ever. And yeah, just like kind of like throughout me doing other things in my life, music was always just like kind of a constant. It's just like I just kept doing it. And yeah, like went to school for music because I wanted to get into like the tech side of it more, and then like turns out the creative side was what sort of unfurled, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess for me it was like, I mean, my first like memory of like wanting to learn an instrument was at one of my friends' like Halloween parties when I was like in the third grade or something. My friend took me to my friend's house, like my friend's parent that was throwing the party's room. They had a guitar in there, and he was like, "I'm gonna show you how to play Schools Out by Alice Cooper." And I think it was totally like not Schools Out at all. Like, I don't remember, but it was like a third grader showing me this that like obviously also didn't play guitar. But yeah, that was like kind of like when I wanted to learn how to play guitar. But it was really, I think, like what got me into like actually wanting to play an instrument was like Guitar Hero and Rock Band, especially like drums. Playing like the Rock Band drums, it's like these 4 pads and you're using actual sticks and a kick pedal. And it just felt real. And that's when I kind of decided, I like played guitar and bass for like a couple of years, but I wasn't that into it. But the drums was kind of like what I really gravitated towards because of like Rock Band. And even Guitar Hero is a rhythm game totally. Like those buttons, you're hitting those in rhythm. It's like you're playing the drums. So yeah, it was kind of that. And it was just like watching videos of like Dave Grohl, like playing with Nirvana was huge for me because I was like, oh, this dude looks fucking cool. And like same thing, like Trey Cool from Green Day, it was the same shit. It was just like seeing these dudes play the drums like this hard and this fast, really was like inspiring to me. I was like, oh, this is like, the coolest thing ever. And yeah, I started like writing songs in a band with my brother. Actually, he was playing bass at the time back in like middle school. And yeah, doing like band stuff. Like I'd been probably playing in bands since I was like 12 years old. Yeah, and continued doing it.
What was your go-to Guitar Hero or Rock Band song?
That's hard to say because
Through the Fire and Flames, right?
dude,
My name is Jonas.
I can rock Through the Fire and Flames on Expert. I won't do it perfectly, but I can get through it. But
I think you're capping.
Joe, am I capping? I'm not capping. I'm not capping.
I
trust
like
him.
literally
I trust
the one.
him.
I don't.
No, I just said I can't do it perfectly, but I don't know. I honestly don't remember.
What's the one? Carry On My Wayward Son. Wasn't
That was
like
fun.
one of the
That was on
easiest ones?
one. That was on Guitar Hero.
Yeah, I feel like that's the
yeah.
only one I ever rocked, and it was
That
like
one
the
was
simplest one. And it was still making that chink 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 pink pink sound. When you miss it, it's like ping ping.
Yeah, I remember playing with my cousin.
Sure, I've gotten through the Fire and
We'll
Flames.
run this later.
Dude, pretty
We'll
good.
let you know.
Let's go. I will like
For the record, Danny Everly says he can rock Through the Fire and Flames on Expert perfectly
I didn't say
without
perfectly.
breaking a sweat.
I didn't say perfectly.
Do it with his eyes closed. No, yeah.
I said like 70. I could probably get like 70%.
Yeah.
But
I don't
70
believe
something.
you at all.
All right.
Well, that's okay.
I believe.
Yeah.
I'm just a believer.
I was pretty good at Guitar Hero. I don't really play it anymore, but I was pretty good at it back in the day.
I was pretty bad at it. My cousins had to like, I would do the like upper part and they would have to do the strumming part for me. But I was also like, I don't know how old I was.
Do you ever play DJ Hero?
DJ Hero was
No, I've never.
I never, but dude,
awful.
that has to be the biggest waste of plastic in human history.
yeah,
so
I
much-
had DJ Hero.
there was so much plastic involved
There's
in
3
it.
buttons and then the turntables. Like,
Wow.
yeah,
It was like Grandmaster Flash.
Terrible.
or
I
something,
always
and-
thought it
we
was
sold
like
it
really,
immediately
really
after we
cool, like conceptually,
No,
but like executed horribly.
Dude, that must have sucked. I never played it, but
Yeah, I didn't even know that existed. That's so funny. Okay, and then so I like what y'all said in a past interview with Line of Best Fit, where you say that you're 2 separate bands, like the live set and the recorded stuff. And I agree with like most bands that is, but like also for you guys sometimes don't play recorded stuff in the same way that you play the live stuff. Like it could be differently, like remixed, kind of like that. How do you guys do that in your live element?
Well, the production process of the records is really, really like collagey. We're just taking like scraps of audio and stuff and sampling it and resampling it, playing like a tons of synths and stuff. We don't think about the form of like the band basically at all when we're producing. We're just like making stuff and trying to make it good and then putting it out. And then when we go to play it live, we basically have to like restructure everything to be playable by 4 people. So it's like there's just probably, maybe 15, 16 synth tracks on or sampler sort of tracks on the recording. And it's like we just can't play everything live because we like don't have the facility to like do so. So most of the time it literally just comes from necessity of having to rework songs to be playable live. And then while we're kind of making them playable, we'll like make caveats to the song. So we'll have like certain sections be way longer and have like remixed parts in them, or we'll just like fully add new sections into the songs. Like Milky Max on the record is like 1/3 the length of when we do it live. Like we have like a whole end section that is like half timed and pitched down, and Danny sings on it live and all this stuff. And then there's other tracks where it's like a track we have called 6 Foot Tongue that's off of like an older project, is just like there weren't even live drums on it in the sense of like ones that we recorded. There was like drum samples and stuff. So when we were coming in to play it live, we were basically like, let's have the just entire track be played on just the drums pretty much. And then we'll just like, it's sort of like presenting challenges that are fun to kind of work with and all this stuff. So I think it really just, comes from necessity. And then while we're trying to figure out how to do it, it becomes like a sort of fun game of like, how do we make this a surprising thing live and like subvert expectations.
And then your live setup is interesting. You guys don't have any guitars on stage, and there's 2 drums. Like what made y'all decide to axe like the aspect of having a guitar or bass on stage? And what made you decide to have like 2 drummers?
Well, like we don't really use guitar or bass in the production anyway. Like it's all electronic. So the Octatrack, which Connor plays, is used in the production process because it's like a sequencer and like a sampler and all this stuff. And then we're basically just misusing the hell out of it live, like, and just playing it like a keyboard. But the buttons aren't designed to be played chromatically or anything. It's just like a sequencer that we're playing chromatically. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I mean, like we're all just like really big like drum heads. Like I just really love. It was like the first instrument that I bought when I was a kid was a drum kit on Craigslist. That I was just like, I played drums in like the first band that I started, and I always really loved the drums. I'm still kind of obsessed with them for some reason. I just think it's like the coolest instrument and the most fun instrument to work with. And like when we were starting the band, I think it was kind of like the whole premise of it was just saying it would be mad cool to do like just a band that is samplers and a massive rhythm section. Just have like 2 stacked out drum kits and like just samplers and see what we can make out of it.
Yeah, and I think just like, the kind of like blending of 2 drum kits, it's been done, many times before, but I feel like every time it's done, it's kind of like taken in a different way where it's like a band like, I don't know, I guess like King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard does it, or like did it. I don't know if they have a second drummer anymore, but it's like, they were kind of like, it was very like motoric, like straightforward,
Melvins comes to mind.
Yeah, Melvins. Yeah. And like, Melvins like so very slow, almost like loose, heavy music. So it's like they were kind of, both drummers could do like different fills, but they're still very like locked doing the same kind of like super slow, like sludgy style. The OC is another band that like comes to mind, but it's like, I don't think that it's been done in this context of like live electronic music much before the 2 drummers, if ever. I don't know. And I really like the idea of kind of like, because there's no guitars, it's like the drums kind of like take the place of like a melodic instrument within, this kind of like sample based thing. And it's like, I like the idea. I say this in every freaking interview, but it's like, I think of the album Marking Moon by Television all the time, of the way that the interplay of the two guitars, there's no distinction between what's lead and what's rhythm. It's like both guitars are like doing their own thing. They're just both guitar. It's not Tom Verlaine playing lead guitar, Richard Lloyd playing rhythm. It's like it's two things. So it's like I kind of want the same thing with the drums, where it's like, even on this record right now that we're working on, I'm kind of like I'm playing on two different kits, and I'm trying to like figure out completely different ways of playing the drums on each of those kits. And like we'll figure out how to make that sound. Like we'll figure out which parts to use for the record. And like, I like that interplay a lot.
Yeah, there's something that's so cool about percussion ensembles, like that. Yeah, I just feel like has stuck with me like forever. Like I saw Tito Puente when I was a kid in like Washington Square Park or something at this like free show. And it was just like 1,000 drums. Like it was like, timbales, and then people had like, like cowbells and claves and all this stuff. And I remember it just feeling like so massive. And then like listening to like the color guard, listening to like drumline music, listening to like gamelan orchestras and all this stuff. It's always been something that's like been very captivating. And so like taking this idea of like big percussion ensemble, like how do we sort of create the feeling of it with two people? It feels like two kids is a sort of like natural decision to come to when you're trying to get like the biggest bang for your buck out of like, you only have a few people in the band. How do you make it sound as gigantic as possible?
And so Hex Dealer is your first album released with Partisan Records. How do you think signing with them changed things for you, if at all?
I mean, I feel like we like they're awesome. They definitely have let us go to a studio more than like once. That's what's up. Like I don't think that like artistically there's much that has happened. Like we kind of had the next few records in mind when we signed with them.
Yeah,
like we kind of knew we were gonna.
Hex Dealer had been done for a while.
Yeah, Hex Dealer had already been finished for a minute
when we signed. It wasn't like they signed us and then we made Hex Dealer. It was like we had Hex Dealer done and like like probably like 30 demos worth of like back catalog that we hadn't recorded drums over yet, but we already like had ready to go. I mean they've been great. I think they've like opened the door to a lot of probably more exposure than we would have released independently. That's a given, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's like very interesting to see that it's like we already had like kind of with Hex Dealer like releasing, we already had kind of like a basis of an audience, whether it was like people that had heard our band already or hadn't heard it yet. It's just like there was anticipation for Hex Dealer, which like if we weren't with Partisan or just like any label for that matter, like there probably wouldn't be that much anticipation for the record coming out. It would just like be us putting it out for our fans and like us hopefully getting more people into it. But it's like Partisan really helped like kind of, promote these singles, like get people interested, like build a basis of like other bands that we would, tour with or, play with. And it just kind of came together. Super cool. But yeah, I feel like as a band in general, like even us working on this record right now, aside from like the extra studio time we're allotted, I feel like creatively we're still totally ourselves and like doing our own thing. And Partisan just happens to like it.
That's a blessing.
Which is like very nice. Yeah.
Yeah. So you brought up that Hex Dealer was already done, but in a past interview, you said you also had like another album done. Is that one like scrapped or like were you guys reworking it or?
I'm not sure. I mean, I can't remember if what we were talking about was like the mixtape thing that we put out before this or like the record that we're working on right now. Because we had like a basically an entire album worth of tracks recorded, which we're now kind of like really whittling down and we're re-recording some stuff. Like that's one of the reasons we're back in the studio today is just like the songs have evolved again. And so now we're kind of like reworking the drum parts and stuff. But we don't have like a whole nother record like in the vault. No. We have like basically like 85% of a record in the vault, but
still some steps.
Yeah, but it's like it's definitely like quite far along at this point. which is awesome.
What can people expect from the next one?
I don't think it sounds like the first one. That's for sure.
Yeah.
I
think at all, really.
I don't think it sounds like the first one. There's definitely elements, but I do think it's going to be an entertaining album. I'll say that. I don't think there is any world where this album feels like lackluster.
Mm-hmm. And then Hex Dealer is kind of like centered around a faith healer. Do you think the next one is like centered around anything?
Yeah, like we were talking about this a lot because it's like the last record I essentially had like storyboarded out in like an iPhone note like before we even started it. And this one has been like much more abstract of a process, like been looking at like a ton of visual art references and a bunch of kind of like little almost like fairy tales type stories, like these little like instead of essentially having the record be like one massive story, it almost feels like a little like Brothers Grimm like book of a bunch of little ones. We had another record that was called Critic Truth Revealed that's like an EP that was centered around this idea that was like these 5 little like vignettes, like these sort of like actual yeah, like fairy tale stories basically. And it was a record that I really liked making because it felt like a big storybook, like or who's the guy that always had those illustrated books that he always
Shel Silverstein.
Shel Silverstein. It feels like a Shel Silverstein kind of like album, but yeah, this feels very similar where we've all been kind of like centering around these like themes and these feelings and all this stuff, and then each track is just kind of like a little story that's like demonstrating one of these ideas.
Cool. What are y'all listening to currently that you think has like a fresh sound or that you're excited about?
I really like Nihiloxica right now. I'm listening to a ton of them. But my friend Hunter put me on to them when we were on tour. And yeah, I mean, I'm obsessed with this record that's like the green one.
I've been obsessed with a band called Torture recently, which is a one-man band slam death metal project. But it's like really interesting. He's actually been touring this with like a live band, but it's very interesting. He recorded this album like drums first. And
right, like improv, like sort of improv.
Yeah. Like improv sort of composed like drum parts. He's an incredible drummer. And you know, it's like this really weird, like kind of avant-garde, like slam music with like hardcore breakdowns and shit, with like the most froggy vocals you've ever heard. But it's just like, slam death metal's like still slam is kind of a new genre. Like it's only like 20 years old, probably. No, like honestly, older than that. Like it's like 30 years old at this point, but it feels like an entirely fresh and new take on the genre. To the point where it's like, it's completely like taken over the internet. Like you can't go on Twitter. Like I can't go on hardcore Twitter anymore or Reddit or anything without the first thing you see is somebody talking about Torture. And it's like a lot of discourse where it's like somebody being like, this sucks. And then a million people being like, you're wrong. Fuck you.
It's awesome.
And people who say it sucks are wrong. It's amazing.
Yeah. New CPU Buddha record is crazy.
Yeah. Absolutely insane.
Yeah. I've been listening to that. And then what else?
Bajalvin are insane. It's like I don't even know how to describe it. It's like brutal death metal dubstep.
Yeah,
it's straight edge karate mosh dubstep.
Yeah,
is what they call it.
New Fantasy of a Broken Heart.
Yes,
I really like that. Yeah,
that is some cool ass music.
Yeah,
Antinomy, this band that's our friend's band, put out an album, and it is a fresh sound.
Yeah.
You will not hear an album that sounds like this album.
Yeah,
probably ever again in your entire life.
I really love the record. I think it came out last year by the band Taking Meds, Dial M for Meds. I feel like it's a really fresh take on like, I don't know, there's a lot of bands doing like the post-hardcore and 90s alternative rock like blend. That's like a really, really big thing now. And I feel like they're doing a really cool take on it because they used to be a math rock band. And like we're doing more like mathy alt rock, post-hardcore, whatever. And like now they're not. It's very straight, like songs forward pop music, like but there's still like the little hints of the weird stuff in there. And that record is just like front to back, amazing.
Been listening to the new Jessica Pratt record a lot. Yeah, I don't know.
Work tonight.
Yeah.
Record was amazing. So y'all will be touring with Military Gun in Europe in just a couple of weeks. How do y'all feel about that, especially just coming off of your like solo run that ended like at the end of June?
Feeling good.
Feeling good. Yeah, I'm excited. I feel like we've been friends with Ian from Military Gun for a while now, and it hasn't lined up yet. So I'm glad now it's finally lining up and we're doing dates with them.
It's going to be a chaotic month and a half for sure, but like those are the shows that I think I'm looking forward to the most.
For sure.
Yeah.
What are some of the songs you're excited to play live?
Definitely, like, I mean, we're trying. I mean, I really like playing this one that's called How Could You
Do This to Me?
Do This to Me? Why Would You Do This to Me? That is an oldie one, but it's one that we used to play a bunch, and then we kind of stopped playing it for a while to pack some other stuff into the set, and now we're bringing it back, and it's just like a minute and a half, and it bangs, and it's really fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I feel like it's just the most like straight hardcore song we have. That shit is sick.
Punk band?
Yeah. I mean, like all the new stuff is like very fun to play. And it's really cool. I mean, we haven't played most of these places yet at all or since like November of last year. So it's going to be cool to go back and play these songs now that they're out and people will know them. So like any of the new stuff, I'm just excited to like see people's reactions to.
Yeah.
And so I saw y'all at the Baby Showcase, and your live set is very like chaotic and interactive and active. How do y'all prep in practices?
Sorry, what was that? How do we what in practice?
Prepare.
Oh, prep. Yeah, it's we definitely play a bunch. We have a tiny practice space in Gowanus, Brooklyn, and we just play a lot in this tiny cube. But I think like the interactive part of it is all very like spur of the moment. And yeah, it's just like a matter. It's honestly just like being like an athlete. Like you gotta, it's like I definitely like, try to, we'd be jump roping and stuff and like making sure I think I saw this video of Miley Cyrus running on a treadmill while singing like Wrecking Ball or whatever that song is. Yeah.
That's right.
And that was like really inspiring because she's like, that show's much longer than ours and way more demanding. So if she can do it on a treadmill, I feel like we can do 45 minutes, just jumping around.
Yeah, just like I guess I have like a specific stretch routine for like playing the drums. And then I also like I try to bring a practice pad with me on tour and like do little rudiments and stuff before I like warm up my hands.
Yeah, and it's just about being as tight as possible in the first place, so then you have like flexibility live to kind of do whatever you want.
Bounce around.
Yeah, and just like throw your body around and stuff.
Mhm.
Because that's where I don't really practice that stuff. I don't think any of us really practice like the interactive elements of it at all.
No.
Like during practice, like there's literally not enough room to like move around in our practice space. Like we're fucking exiled into our own little corner. So it's just like, being really, really tight as a baseline to allow yourself to have flexibility to like do whatever you want during the live set.
And then what's y'all's Wawa order?
Broccoli, cheddar, mac and cheese, and an iced tea.
Yeah, I don't know, just a hoagie. Like I like doing the Italian, but like that's just yeah.
Chicken cheesesteak with the chipotle aioli.
Yeah, there's really sometimes you can get really the Wawas differ though. Like sometimes it's like the fruit cups are looking really good.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're looking horrible. So
Like pickled egg.
Yeah, you gotta know how
Wawa
to
iced
navigate.
tea.
Yeah.
Peach iced tea.
Peach iced tea
gas.
and a mac and cheese. Oh my
It's
God.
gas.
Take me to pearly gates.
Okay, so for your playlist topic, you guys chose songs that you're currently listening to. Do you want to walk us through your playlist and like some of the picks that you have?
Yeah, let me
Yeah.
pull it up.
Family by Connor Cassidy. This is a song we listen to when we're driving a lot. We found this guy off an Instagram ad.
He's just like a Massachusetts underground rapper, but he's sick.
Really good. Then Blinding Ignorance by Torture,
which is
one of
the band I was just talking about. It's just like I feel like that song is the most like fully. I mean, the whole project's incredible, but it's the most like fully realized, kind of like catchy song on the record. It's absolutely insane.
Yeah. This song Postnatal Drip by AADJA. This is like, I don't know, it's just a techno track off of this label called Trip Records, which is Nina Kravitz's label, I think, or I don't know if it's her label or it's just like the one she's like the most prominent artist on, who features like my favorite techno artist of all time, this guy Vladimir Dubishkin, and this is just a crazy track off of that label.
Mailman by Fat Daddy. This is a song we heard on the radio in Texas, I believe.
Or On the Way to Texas.
On the Way to Texas. And it's just a really catchy, song. And it also has like a really interesting lyrical kind of narrative. Yeah. If you listen to the lyrics, it takes a really interesting turn. Mm-hmm. This next track, Slit Your Guts by Cryptopsy. I got put onto them during tour. And then we actually got to see them live because we played underneath them, like at a venue that was like in the basement of a venue they were playing. So within like 4 days of finding out about who they were, I listened to like 2 of their records and then got to see them live, and they were amazing. Yeah. And there's this song Hondo, which is by these guys called Sisso and Mako. And Sisso is like one of the prominent guys on this label out of East Africa called Nyege Nyege Tapes. They're just like really sick. I forget if it's Tanzania or Uganda, but they just like publish like a ton of like really crazy experimental electronic music and otherwise, like from like Indian and East African artists. And yeah.
So Do I by The Chisel. The Chisel, I just feel like they're a UK like kind of oi punk hardcore band. And I feel like they're doing the best take on like that like 70s oi style that any kind of punk band is doing right now. It's like just super catchy, super fun, but it still sounds like fresh. Like it doesn't sound like they're recycling old ideas. Instead, it sounds like it's just a new, exciting like take on oi. After that, we put 128 by the Mighty Mighty Boss Tones. I just like rediscovered this song recently, and it's just like insane. It's like it goes from sounding like a Leeway song, like really like thrashy hardcore, to like a Special song. It's like, and it closes out their like biggest album, the one with like The Impression That I Get, which is like, you know, their big like pop record. And most of the record is like kind of just like ska punk, and then this song goes more in their like roots of like thrashy hardcore stuff. It's really cool.
And this is Rolling with the Flow by Charlie Rich. This is a song we do a cover of, and I really like it. My friend showed me it because it was his go-to karaoke song. Then Transmuting Chemical Burns by Full of Hell. This is off their new record, Coagulated Bliss, and it's just goes hard as living hell.
Yeah, the song Pocket by Voice Actor. It's like, I don't know, it's like an 8.5 minute sound collage. This whole record is crazy. It's like it's like 4.5 hours long.
It's so long.
You listen to this in the van, like we were sitting, Connor and I were sitting in the front seat, and I was reading, and this record played for actually like 2 or so hours without us like noticing that it was still, we were just like,
we were driving from San Francisco to Portland, which if anyone's ever done that drive, it's like kind of the most beautiful drive in America, like going up going up north there. And I remember we put on this record because I'd known like one song off of that record or 2 songs. I was just like, all right, let's see what the whole record sounds like. And it was playing, and it was like very trance-like, and I was like, damn, I hope this record just like doesn't end. You know, I've been listening to like 40 minutes of it. I hope it's like it just like an hour long or something like that, so I get to squeeze an extra 20 minutes out of it. And little did I know that it's like 110 songs long. So
No, I discovered, I think You Projected Too, which is on that album, and I was like, let me listen to this full album. It's too long. I feel like I've gotten through like a third of it, and
it's like really beautiful.
It's really beautiful, but also like that's what I appreciate about this record is that like, oh yeah, it's like I will in many ways you will never get through it because like a it's 4.5 hours long, and B, like a lot of the songs are like very short or sound like other songs. So it's almost like, it's almost like you get like new elements like constantly. It's like to like know this record, you would probably have to listen to it like 5 times, which would take you 20 hours. It's just like unfeasible to like actually um like really know this record deeply, which is like I think very cool. And then
Fast.
the next song is called Inhale by
Jitus.
and it's just a really
It's great.
good rap song.
Right? Wasn't he kind of like out of the picture for a long time and he just kind of popped back up?
Yeah, in a sense. Yeah, he just like, I mean, he had that like this song kind of like went viral on Twitter of him like just singing it a cappella, and then he did the same thing with a new song, both of which I find quite beautiful. Yeah.
Then this is Where Do You Go by Zuli. Really sick Egyptian drum and bass producer.
Last song is The Other End by Taking Meds. I was talking about that record earlier. I just feel like, lyrics on this song are really good. The melody is just super catchy. It's fun. It's good music.
Yeah, that's our playlist.
Yeah. So what do you think, where do you think you're finding your music from lately?
I've been finding like honestly a bunch of stuff from the like festival lineups and stuff. I've been like listening to stuff from we were gonna try to go to this festival in Marseille that Vladimir Dubishkin was playing. And I was looking at the festival lineup and just was like listening to a bunch of the other artists and
Le Clown.
yeah, like Clown. Yeah. But it's like there was stuff too, like the Outbreak festival lineup, I was just like listening to stuff off of that. And then I'll always like
Sound and Fury.
Sound and Fury's lineup.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
feel
mean,
that's a
just
big
like
one.
I go to a lot of hardcore shows like when we're not on tour, and those bills are normally just like 7 bands. So it's like, I'll try to go like at doors so I could like see a band, and then
End up seeing 6 random bands you've never heard
yeah,
of.
yeah. And then it's like, and it's like I always just get every time I go to a show, I'm like, oh, that band was really good. Now like I just saw Have Heart the other night at the Brooklyn Monarch, and Ankle Bite. I actually missed Ankle Biter, but after that Move from Boston.
That does one.
And I had like heard of them, but I'd never listened to them. They were so good, just like crazy, like beat down. But the drummer's like a gospel drummer. Dude was just chopping the whole time. It's really good. Vocalist was just like super political, but also like super like uplifting and fun. And he was the craziest monster I've ever seen too. Like every other set, this dude was crowd killing. He was awesome. But yeah, put me on. It was sick.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of festival lineups have been announced recently. Like, I feel like Desert Days just got announced.
Oh yeah, that was the other day.
How like 20 people posted.
Oh yeah. Our friends in Yahweh Nailed on
Playing Desert Days? I think Snooper's playing.
Yeah.
Dude, big.
Snooper's sick.
Yeah,
dude,
Snooper. That's
shout
another. We
out
didn't mention
Snoop.
Snooper, but
Snoopers
that
posted.
band is
Obsessed with that album right
Yeah.
now.
I saw them for the first time, I think last week or 2 weeks ago, because I missed them.
Elsewhere?
Yeah, at Elsewhere.
We were at the show.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sad it got moved indoors, but I think it was probably for the best. Like the roof with that show, I don't know. I'd be intrigued to see how that would have been.
Yeah.
You might have
for sure.
ended up on the inside anyway if it was on the roof, via a cave-in.
No,
It would
yeah,
be like the video where they played Finado at the
House
Yeah,
party.
at the house party. It caved in the whole building.
no, that show was super funny because I was taking photos, but I wasn't paying attention, and like the guitarist like dove into the crowd, but like they essentially fell on top of me. It was really funny though.
You were probably just like 3
Very
people in
close
front
friends,
of us.
probably,
Yeah,
yeah.
like I watched that happen. Like
Yeah,
3
yeah.
people next to us. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I was like, okay, I'm gonna give up on taking pictures for the show. It's fine.
By the way, I remembered my song was Cherub Rock on Guitar Hero. That was like my go-to.
Rock.
Yeah.
I like the Evanescence song. Which one is it? Like
You mean alive?
not Bring Me to Life. It was the sober one. You never come.
Oh yeah. That's sick.
Yeah. Okay. So we're coming to the end of the podcast. Is there anything that you want to plug or, last words?
We're going to Europe. We're doing a tour in Europe. Then I wait.
in
The other
October.
one, that one's announced, right?
Yeah, in October we're going on tour. I think 8 shows with a band called Fat Dog, who are also another shout out. Fat Dog, amazing band. Like really some of the craziest music I've heard like ever.
Yeah,
It's
I saw,
so weird.
I saw them talk by Insane. I'm excited for the record to come out.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, so we're playing with them. More to come after that.
Yeah, we're working on an album. We're working on a crazy set of t-shirts. We design and print our own shirts and stuff. So we're gonna have a bunch of new merch drops coming up.
Yeah. Come see us in Europe if you're in Europe.
Yeah, we are not from Europe. Please. It's hard for us to get over there, and we are not from there. So if you want to see us, you gotta see us
and
now.
buy merch as well.
Yeah, buy a t-shirt.
Okay, yeah, thank you for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.